Today, we're going to discuss analyzing DDR memory, and we'll discuss it as an extension of the tools we use for high-speed serial data. Right now I'm looking at a PRBS signal. It's a 2.5 gigabit PCI Express signal being played out of a generator. Now there used to be a time where to build an I would have probably had to use hardware clock recovery, actually recover a clock from it and trigger on the hardware clock. So instead of edge triggering, I would have to come over here, use a COM trigger, tell it's a PCI Express 2.5 gigabits, and then I can go into equivalent time sampling mode, and I can see the I diagram. Right now I am using the hardware of the scope to trigger on the recovered clock. Now this is still a very useful tool, and there's still a lot of times I might want to use this, and actually it's quite unique that the Tektronix scope has not only a COM trigger, but a serial trigger where I can trigger in hardware up to 5 gigabits on various serial data patterns. But to do I diagrams, we don't need to worry about triggering. Come back in here to our edge mode, because almost every manufacturer out there, when you ask it for an I diagram, does not use a COM trigger anymore. We all use software clock recovery. And this is pretty common. You're going to see this on most vendors' oscilloscopes. You just tell it you want a width measurement in this case, and most of them will just give you a constant run type mode where it renders an I. One thing Tektronix does that's unique is that we actually have it in its own separate graph. So even though it's live updating here, the data is still back here. You can see the data on which the I was made. Most vendors, what they'll do is they'll make this disappear and they'll just cover it with an I and they'll call it a trigger. Well, we like to be very specific with you and say, yes, we're triggering, but just on an edge. The software is handling rendering the I. And as you become better with jitter tools, what you're going to do, and most standards call for this, you're going to do a much longer capture. You're going to probably capture something like 10 microseconds or 20 microseconds of data. You're going to build an I off of that. It's the only way to see low-speed jitter effects. If you have a mask violation, you can jump right to the bit that broke the mask. This is the way any major vendor does analysis today. Here I can see the UI that I've captured, and I've rendered them all into an I diagram. As you can see, AP10B serial data is very easy to do this with because it's uniform. It's always going up and down. There's no tri-states, and there's no reads or writes or anything like that. So what sort of challenges do we have when we look at DDR memory? I'm going to turn on my two DDR channels over here. I have them enabled as math channels on here because they're being played out of an ARB. And what you can see is I've got basically what we call the strobe line, that's the DQS line, and then we have the data line. And a lot of the difficulties we have in analyzing this are that when you look at it, you've got reads, you have write, you have all sorts of different signals happening in there. And a lot of vendors have struggled with how do I use my tools to analyze these. Probably most familiar with the idea of drawing zones. You draw a zone here to create a trigger, and then you draw another zone to say if it's a read or if it's a write. That was really the original way of doing this analysis, but times have changed, and Tektronix has developed a tool that requires you to not draw those zones. First I'll show you the basic engine of the tool, and then show you just how easy it is to make your measurements and why it's superior. We call it Advanced Search and Mark. You'll notice that this will allow us to mark any one of our trigger events in memory. We can actually set up to 8 simultaneous searches in memory, and we can do them on math channels, live channels, reference channels, and we mark everywhere in memory an event has occurred. So here we're going to tell it we want to mark DDR reads, and we want to mark DDR writes. Take a look. The writes are marked in blue and the reads are marked in pink. No need to draw any boxes, no need to analyze one bit at a time. If I had to trigger on the reads and writes separately, I could only analyze one burst at a time. Now I can come out here, and just like we do with all of our other tools, I can analyze a large amount of data at once. Come down here to results, and you can see all the different reads and writes in memory. I can click on it, zoom, and see each one has been marked. So just like we do for 8B10B encoded data, when we analyze this, we want to get large captures in memory and analyze them continuously. Why? One of them is for throughput, and the second one is really for accuracy. Because suppose I've got a bad bit every now and then. Well, let's just come in here and just analyze a few of them. Come down here to our DDR Utility, And what we're going to do is pick first our DDR type, DDR, DDR2, DDR3, LPDDR, GDDR3. All of these are one package from Tektronix. You pick the data rate, could be whatever you want or custom. The point is you buy our DDR utility and you can do all the supported DDR types you need. First we're just going to ask for a data I height, and we'll do a small capture just to show you what we're talking about. Come over to here and let's capture a few UI on the display, and what we'll do is we'll just stop it and hit recalc. In this case, population 1. Let's get a few more on the display. I'm trying to prove a point here. We're going to stop the acquisition, clear this, and what we're doing is we're actually going to data I height and ask for an eye diagram on the display. There we go, and there's our eye. If we had only triggered on one, we might think our eye was perfectly good. Take a look, we've marked 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 bursts. 14 bursts, a total of 151 bits. That would have taken 14 independent triggers if I had set up a trigger. But once again, let's make use of our tools and let's capture a much, much longer capture. This is a 20 microsecond capture. You can see all the writes marked in memory, and we'll push recalc on this. Now take a look. There's some bad bits in there. I have captured a total of 1,523 bits. If I look at my counts over here, that's 131 acquisitions. That would have been 131 triggers and analysis of a tool that was not able to analyze a complete memory record. So first, I was able to find the error a lot faster. Now I'm going to come back into DDR analysis, and I'm going to turn on a few more measurements. Show you the power of a long capture. Now let's run all of these measurements with their JEDEC limits loaded in here. I can see right there, I can see the error in the mask, that I've got some bad bits in there. When I come down here, I can look at my results. Let's take a look at our TDH diff. It says fail. Well, let's find out the failure. All I have to do is click on the magnifying glass, and right there, you see that? There's a little glitch in the waveform. That was my failure. So doing long memory analysis allows me to find my errors quickly, and it allows me to see them as soon as they happen. Here I can see another bad edge that was failing a test. Now if I wanted to set up a trigger on DDR memory, I could do it. I could set up a window trigger and separate between the reads and the writes. And I might do that on a bus that was not particularly active. We can show that another day. The main point is I don't need to set up triggers on DDR memory, just like I don't need to set them up on high-speed serial data. We have the capability of triggering on it. It's a very useful tool for debug, but long memory analysis using Tektronix Advanced Search and Mark and DPOJET jitter tools are a much better way to analyze this information.